Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday, Codebar. How are we all doing? Nice. Good energy, especially good since it's right before lunch as well. So I'll try to make sure that I run to time and don't hold over. So, yes, I'm here today to talk about public speaking. Well, public speaking, which we had a good comment about how meta that is this morning. So I'm going to talk about my own journey to how I got here and a lot of the things that stopped me for a long time standing on a stage and speaking, which will hopefully bust a lot of the reasons why maybe you're feeling you can't be standing here like I am today. We're going to talk about CFPs. We're going to explain what they are and how to fill them in just to make you feel more comfortable. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about why bother doing this. You know, it can be quite a scary, intimidating thing to stand up and speak in front of a large group of people. What benefits does it actually give for your career? So we're going to cover all of that. So my name is Carly. I'm a senior developer advocate at Elastic. So one of the cool things is that speaking is part of my job. Before that, I was a front-end engineer and I did other roles as well. But I worked at Morgan Stanley for 10 years. So I've been around and I hang about all sorts of various places on the interweb. So if you want to connect, if you want to take Danielle's advice on networking and connect on LinkedIn and say hi, I am on there. I'm on X, Mastodon, and I have my personal site as well. So don't be afraid to reach out and say hi, particularly if you've got questions afterwards. So firstly, I have a question for you all. So does anyone know what glossophobia is or is willing to have a guess? No, we're all shaking heads. You got a guess, Danielle? It is a fear of public speaking. Well done. And it's actually a very common fear. So one study I found from 23andMe that was done in 2022 said that about 23% of Brits have a fear of public speaking. So just under a quarter. And it comes from all sorts of different factors. You can be more predisposed to it for factors such as your genetics, such as your gender. There's all sorts of different reasons aside from the usual aspect of it being, a genuine fear. But it's also partially an evolutionary thing. So one of my favorite quotes about the fear of public speaking is by actually a stand-up comedian. So obviously speaking is her job. And her name is Deborah Francis White. So there's a TED Talk video that I recommend you watch called Charisma versus Stage Fright. And she makes the very apt point that basically the reason that public speaking is so scary is because you are effectively, I am right now, a gazelle standing in front of a pack of lions that are, I know it's just before lunchtime, so please don't eat me. But that's basically her point. You are in a situation of fear where potentially you might, end up embarrassed. And it's basically adrenaline that's starting to go through your body and your system to say, Carly, it might be time to run. But it's not just this evolutionary thing, because there's all sorts of situations and reasons why we don't put ourselves forward for speaking in the first place. And that's even before we get to the aspect of adrenaline and fear. The first one is a past bad experience with speaking. So hands up if you've ever had an experience of speaking in public, maybe at school, maybe at university, maybe in your job, and you've went, I never want to do that again. See that the majority of hands are up in the air? There's a reason for that. We've all had it. I hated doing public speaking at school. In fact, the education system for public speaking, particularly in the state system in the UK, in my opinion, sucks. Because we don't actually get education in how to speak. They don't talk about things like microphones. They don't talk about posture. They don't talk about things like handling nerves and how to prepare. My experience of public speaking quite often was you're going to be doing a talk or you're presenting on a topic. And it was more the research and the knowledge that you showcased that was actually the thing that was under assessment. And I wasn't getting feedback on things like how to stand properly, how to handle nerves, how to deal with aspects like breath. And sadly, that is very much something that if you're not getting regular practice and you're getting regularly voluntold to do this, that you're never going to get better at. The other thing is quite often, for various reasons, we put things off and then think it's too late. Maybe we've missed the boat. Maybe we're busy. So I actually only started speaking 4 years ago. And I've worked in tech for just over 12 years. And I'm not saying that opportunities didn't come up before, But it was easy to put them off because I was busy. I was doing other things. I was looking for that next promotion, or I was working on that next big project and working on my deliverables. And I'm here to tell you it's never too late to start. If I can start like 8, 9 years into a career, anyone can start. And it's the same with any skill. Think about codebar. Codebar is a really fantastic example of people learning new skills regularly and trying something different. And speaking can be the same. Sadly, the state of role models is also a big problem. So I come from a very formally corporate background, and a lot of the speakers that I would see at things like town halls and stuff didn't look like me. It was normally predominantly white men in suits. And also, they didn't speak in the same way as me. So when I started to get feedback initially on public speaking, back when I really didn't want to do it, I was getting advice that I thought was silly, like, oh, you need to lower your voice tone so that you can project better. That's what the microphone is for. I'm sorry. I'm not Elizabeth Holmes. But also, please watch The Dropout. It's fantastic. I do recommend it. But I'm here to tell you that there are fantastic role models out there, and I get to meet them every single day. In fact, we've got the lovely Amber and Danielle, and so many of our other speakers today are role models for you. And these are the people that I want you to look at and see, oh, that person looks like me, or that person has a similar hair color, or I really identify with this other person. Because role models help us kind of embrace that fear a bit and say that something's achievable for us. And that includes things like public speaking. So please look at all these wonderful role models I've found from all the different conferences I've managed to kind of scour, and some that I've been lucky enough to attend. And if you don't see them, I am sorry, firstly. And secondly, I would love to be putting your picture on this collage because I think you could be that role model for other people. One of the sad ones as well that put me off for so long, and I even still hear this because I actually did a speaker clinic on Tuesday, is people think they're not technical enough. And this is one of my biggest bugbears when I speak to people in tech, because I've been there, and I don't think this construct of being technical enough makes sense. We seem to say that we need to know the nitty-gritty details of every single language and framework that we use in our day-to-day roles or the things that we're learning in order to say that we are knowledgeable enough to stand up and talk about it. That is not true. It's absolute rubbish. And it's rubbish for several reasons. Firstly, your experience of learning and picking up tricks is going to help other people coming in the door behind you. So in order to make sure that we're sharing those things, we need to be comfortable by saying, I don't know everything. The second thing is, technical talks are not endless streams of code on every single slide. See, if they were, you'd see the most of the audience falling asleep. It will get too dense, it will get really boring, and people will start to get confused and a bit overwhelmed. So the best tech talks are not all code. They include things like architecture diagrams. They include memes, jokes, pictures. Anything at all that can help you relay across the concept is fair game when it comes to content. And then the final thing, hate to break it to you, conference organizers, meetup organizers, they want diverse topic sets. It's not just about diversity of speakers, it's diversity of thought, diversity of topics. So I've spoken at conferences where we don't just talk about code all the time. We talk about leadership. We talk about public speaking. We talk about networking. We talk about DevOps, cloud. These things are not about writing endless streams of code. And you could be the person that's giving that talk if it's within your comfort zone to start with. Because that's how I started out, to be honest. Because every single person in this room is a cup of knowledge. You have experiences. You might have come from different careers, different industries, and you can look at things in a different way and apply constructs in a way that can be relatable to other people. And speaking is a way to share that knowledge and put yourself out there and also help other people. Now, for a long time, I didn't think I had that knowledge. In fact, sometimes it's really easy for us to think that what we know is so obvious that it's something that everybody knows. And the reality is that that's not true. The turning point for me was the quote that's up here from a fantastic intern that I worked with when I was still at Morgan Stanley. because I was sharing loads of content inside my company. They had a blogging platform, but I wasn't sharing anything outside. And the reality was, he was saying to me that it's not just, interns coming into the organization that you can help and support with the things that you know. It's also people outside. It's people here at codebar. It's people across the world. So it's definitely worth sharing that knowledge because it's not obvious to everyone. So you want to get into speaking. Hopefully I've convinced some people now. I see some nods and I also see some very scared gazelles, and that's absolutely fine. Look, it's a big journey because I've been doing it for 4 years. It takes some small steps and it does take a bit of courage, I'm going to admit. But there's other things we can do too. I'm saying that every single person in this room can be that lion strutting across the pride at the next conference. I'm hoping that at least a few people can replace my spot at codebar next year. That's the aim of the game. So let's talk about tools. Public speaking is a skill like anything else, like writing code. How do we learn it? Well, I have a few resources for you. First things first, see if you're not comfortable speaking quite yet, those gazelles I spotted before that are still in the audience. Why don't you write instead? Why don't you do videos? It doesn't have to be about standing on a stage to start with to showcase your knowledge. And that's what happened to me. I wasn't ready yet to speak. Why would I want to do that? But what I ended up doing was I started writing on Medium instead. I wouldn't recommend it these days because the paywall really dropped my readers for a while. But there's other places you can write to. There's things like Hacker Noon. There's things like dev.to, for example, where you can create an account and start. If you're brave enough, you could submit proposals to publications like InfoQ, for example. But you could also create your own site. You don't need to code it from scratch. I'll give you a dirty little secret. Despite the fact I'm a front-end engineer, this is built on WordPress. Drag and drop. Doesn't have to be the prettiest, most amazing site in the world, even if you're a front-end engineer. If you want to make it a pet project and build the site, go for it. But if you don't have time, and I don't, because I'm a busy mom to a 4-year-old, and I work full-time, and I speak, it's okay to use shortcuts as long as you're showing what you know. Second thing is, think about workshops. We've had some fantastic workshops at codebar this week. It's a big happenstance at very many conferences I attend as well. And there's workshops for public speaking as well. So if you are part of an organization at the moment, it might be worth checking, because certainly when I worked at some of the companies I've worked at have had workshops that you can join for things like practice for public speaking or how to build a cohesive talk argument, things like that. But there's also some free resources that you can try. So I'm a member of the Aspiring Speakers and Aspiring Women Speakers group, which are free to join. They have a Slack you can ask questions on, but they also run events like the speaker clinic I did on Tuesday, where people were asking tons of questions about speaking. Occasionally they were on other workshops and programs as well. There might also be others that we don't know about. So Global Diversity CFP Day was the first event that I went to 4 years ago. Sadly, has not come back post-pandemic. But it was a great resource because it was a workshop where they talked you through how to write an abstract, how to find conferences, a lot of the things I'm covering today. So be on the lookout because there'll be resources popping up all over the place. And there might even be some attached to conferences. So some conferences might run sessions where you can get practice and feedback ahead of the conference, particularly if you're a new speaker. So just be on the eye out for all these workshops. But also use mentors. I think particularly we focus too much in tech on the fact that mentors are good for things like career progression or for learning particular skills like coding and very technical stuff. But mentors are pivotal for speaking as well. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for a mentor. I had a fab mentor called Jim, who basically gave me the kick into public speaking that I needed, in a nice way, Jim would do things like review my abstracts. He pointed me towards groups where I could get support. He's a wonderful influence and certainly someone that you could talk over the fears with. So if you find someone that you connect with today that you think, oh, they're good at slides, or they're good at speaking, or they're good at something in particular that I want to learn more about. Utilize the tips for networking, connect with them and say hi. I'm sure they'll say yes, it'll be fine. But you can also use these communities. So I found out most of these from Jim, actually, when I joined. So there's the London Java community. But if you're a member of any meetup groups at all, organisers are always wanting speakers. I run the Elastic London meetup, and finding speakers can sometimes be a challenge. And quite often they're willing to offer support and help with you building your talk and even things like practice runs. So if you're a member of a meetup, that's a good place to start. But check out those aspiring speaker and aspiring women speaker groups I talked about as well. And if you do want something a bit more formal, there's an organization called Toastmasters that is not tech affiliated. I'm seeing a smile. Are you a Toastmaster member? Come and see this wonderful person afterwards if you're interested in Toastmasters, because you will have a lot more knowledge on it than I will. But there's Toastmasters all over London, all over the world. So if you look on their site, you'll probably find a group nearby that can help you with speaking. And some organizations also have their own internal groups as well, so keep an eye out. So we talked about tools, but what about the road to speaking? Because we've already said that it's hard. It is a journey. And what I'm suggesting is you need to take small steps and build it up, just like you would with learning code, learning a new framework, learning any kind of skill in tech at all. Because, well, it's very apt that our prior speaker was talking about mountaineering. Because public speaking is kind of like learning how to climb a mountain. You're not going to just dive on a plane tomorrow and say, I'm going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro despite no experience at all. This is going to be fine. This is not going to be fine. So break it into smaller pieces. Like any other skill that seems insurmountable, we break it into smaller chunks and we try and increment and get better as we go and try increasing bigger steps. So the first thing is talk about how long you're speaking for. Lightning talks, 5 minutes. Actually very hard when you start because it's far easier to just keep talking than to talk for a fixed period of time. She says as she's going to check how much time she's got left. Start with 5 minutes, then keep going, build it up. So is it 10 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? Maybe you can get to 20. Any JavaScript engineers in the audience? Right, if you get to 20 minutes, that's the length for a lot of JavaScript conferences. Easy peasy. Keep going, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So if you get to 50, have I got any Java engineers in today? Right, so you can submit to Devox UK, 50-minute conference talk, no pressure. They do have 30-minute slots as well, depending on the track and things. But it's all about building it up as you go. And I'm not just talking about duration, I'm talking about the format as well. So we are in a hybrid situation today. Sometimes it's easier to be speaking to, an audience online in a familiar environment because, you have your cup of tea, your coffee next to you, you have your familiar sights and sounds in your office. That can feel more comfortable to start with. I actually started with phone presenting, which is a bit weird because you can't see anyone. But originally it was when I worked as a front-end engineer, I was the person that was doing all the demos for a sprint review. So every 2 weeks, we were showing users new features. And because I knew what buttons not to click, I had to show the big error that we were going to fix next week, I promise. I would be the one quite often that was presenting, and I would be showing off the features and chatting to users and getting feedback. That's a form of presenting practice, if you think about it. And I actually would have my notes next to me so that I could actually kind of tick off in my head that I was covering everything as I go. So it doesn't have to be in person. It can be on phone, it could be online. You could try a meetup, which is smaller, which might be in a smaller room. So then you don't need to worry about peripherals like microphones, which can make it feel a bit scary. And then you can go to bigger conferences because it's not often just the idea of how many people you're speaking to, but even things like the first time you use a handheld microphone, that can knock you off as well. And that is A-okay. But the other thing is knowledge. So going back to that notion of being technical or not technical enough, right? Let's talk about something we're comfortable with. I didn't start talking about tech nitty-gritty detail topics straight away. See, when I started speaking, I hadn't written code for 2 years. because between role changes and 6 months maternity leave, it just hadn't come up. And I felt super rusty. So what did I do? I talked about what I knew. So started talking about tech learnings through maternity leave. And from there, I was doing a lot more Scrum Mastery when I got back to work. So I started talking about that. And from there, when I transitioned back to being an engineer, I then was finding topics that I could talk about that were more around frameworks and technologies. So I just followed that comfort level. But you also need to think about the future. There's always one particular thing that might not be in your comfort zone yet. You might not feel confident doing a keynote yet. I did an Ignite for the first time last week. I've been putting them off for 4 years. So an Ignite is a 5-minute lightning talk where the slides auto-rotate every 15 seconds. I can see people looking scared. That was me until last week. I'm sorry, I like my clicker. I do. Having control of when you click and select the next slide is actually a comfortable thing. But you know what? I actually quite enjoyed the Ignite, so I'd be quite happy to do it again. But it took me till last week to do that. So let's talk about how we apply. CFPs, call for papers, sometimes called call for proposals. General idea is this is you saying, I want to speak at this conference. They are occasionally used for meetups. It's very rare. Generally, it's on more of a volunteer with the organizers kind of situation. But for conferences, the majority will have some form of CFP. So how do we find forums? I can share these resources afterwards, since the links are showing up in very bad blue that we can't see. But the main things are sometimes word of mouth is helpful. So people might tell you a particular conference that they thought was really good that they attended. Sometimes frantic Googling is good, but it's a bit hit and miss, to be perfectly honest. You can also use platforms for CFP. So a popular one is Sessionize, which is not specific to a particular conference, and you can actually search for events in there as well. I also have some other lists, like there's the Tech Daily CFP email blast and Find Your Next Tech Conference, which are sites where you can look up events. And then also there's a wonderful list by the wonderful Aurélie Vache, where she actually has prior year agendas for main conferences in Europe. So I'd recommend looking at her GitHub as well. And I'm happy to share these resources afterwards for people wanting to find them out. Okay, so what goes into a CFP, which is the bit which scared me the most when I started, because I didn't know what to do. So concrete tips. The mandatory things I would recommend is you need a title for your talk. Make sure it's not super wordy and long, and make sure it explains what your talk's about. Cryptic titles, people just ask you what the talk's about before they even join, so it might affect your attendance numbers. You need the abstract, which is just a few sentences. What is your talk about? What are you going to be covering? You then should have an outline, but I'm not talking about super detailed, just the key talking points. What is the audience going to learn? Maybe 5 or 6 max. Who is the target audience? Are you talking to developers? Is it primarily for designers? Is it people with assumptions about particular technologies, for example? Think about the format. So are you going to do that Ignite talk that scared me until last week? Are you going to do the full length slot? Is it aimed at beginners or intermediates or advanced? Which track is it in? So a track is basically multiple themes that the conference covers. So that could be particular languages, it could be agility, it could be DevOps, it could be things like that, it could be build practices. There'll be a list on the conference site. And then optionally, if you already have slides for a talk you've done before, for example, share those. And if you have a sample video, share that. But I'll give you a secret. It doesn't have to be the same talk. It could be a podcast. It could be a lightning talk that you did with a group. It's more to just showcase your speaking style, not necessarily what that particular talk is doing. Especially if you put a note in, which I would encourage, saying, I'm a first-time speaker, because you might get extra support and help. So I have an example. This is DevOps UK, and I'm just going to show you roughly where each field fits, because that's where I certainly was kind of deer in headlights when I started. So at the top, there is the title. I don't know if I got a laser on this, but it's fine. At the top, we've got the title. So obviously put the title in there. Description field, you might see description or abstract. So either of those, put that abstract in there. Sometimes you can add in tags. So use that to put in like the themes or the technologies or the techniques or tools that you're going to be covering. So for example, I've got Elasticsearch up there. Then you've got your speaker profile. So put in your contact details and make sure they're correct. A colleague of mine put in an incorrect email address, and then the conference couldn't get a hold of her. And that was a bit of a panic moment. Even the pros do it. And then you have the track. So is it agility? Is it Java? Whatever it is. The session type. So is it that Ignite or that full conference slot? What's the level of the audience? Beginner, intermediate, or advanced? And then there's a notes section here. See that outline, the target audience? See those things like I'm a first-time speaker. Any other allowances you want, like you need sound, put those in the notes. Most conferences have a notes or anything else section. So if you're not sure where it fits, put it in the notes. And then this section also has slides and video link. See if there's not a specific section. Where does it go? It goes in the notes. Thank you. Cool. And then do you know what you do? You follow Helen's advice. You hit the submit button, you run away, and you make a cup of tea. Because the first few times you do this, you're going to be freaking out. You're going to be very panicky. You're going to be like, what have I done? Carly said this was going to be fine, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this. You hit the submit button and you run away. And from there, one of three things will happen. Either we're going to celebrate and do a victory dance because you will get confirmation that you were accepted. And when you do, please confirm with the organizers. You have to confirm. It might be a no, and that's fine. There's all sorts of different reasons. It's not just the fact that your talk we'd consider to be rubbish. Absolutely not. Most of the time, it's things that multiple people have submitted the same topic and they had to pick. Or it could be other factors. So see, particularly when you start, ask for feedback. It's absolutely okay. Sadly, sometimes people might not get back to you, particularly if it's a conference with a large number of submissions. And that's okay too. It's not a reflection on what you've submitted, same as a no. So now you've got to prepare. You've got to prepare. Charismatic speakers are not just about stepping on the stage having done no preparation. It's about practice and it's about making sure that you know what you're covering. So it doesn't matter whether it's slides, whether it's a Figma design, whether you're brave enough to do live coding. I'm still not quite there yet, to be honest. I use a lot of screenshots of code in my stuff. Make sure that you pull your slides together. Make sure you know what's there and you're comfortable with it. And also pull together your notes, particularly if you're perhaps English isn't your first language, or perhaps you're a nervous speaker, or even you're new. Think about those bullet points you're going to cover on each slide. And quite often, if you're presenting in this kind of format, you will be able to see your laptop in front so you can have a sneaky look at your notes. But if not, if you want to use cards or paper, that's up to you. It's no big deal, no judgment. Be careful with PowerPoint slides. As Deborah says, quite often we can use them as a distraction to distract away from the fact that we are the center of attention. If you're using bullet points, Danielle had really good, clear, short bullet points to explain every point. Try and do something like that. Don't have endless streams of text, which people are just going to read and then not focus on you. Be comfortable using things like code snippets, covering only the essential code, put in images, make it fun, make it personal. It's okay. And then practice. So yesterday in prep for codebar, I was standing in my office with my slides up, talking to myself, running through this talk. My neighbors probably thought something was weird going on when I was particularly doing the hand gestures and waving around. But practice speaking. It helps with things like breathing, with tone. If you're worried about things like filler words, if you're worried you say too much, which most people don't notice, to be honest, go for all of those things. Record yourself and watch it back. Has anyone ever done that? How does it feel? It's absolutely horrific, isn't it? It's horrible. You don't sound the same way that you do normally, do you? It's okay, but bonus points, get a friend to watch it as well as you. Don't do it every time. It can get too much. But see if you get a friend to watch it as well, or a colleague or someone you trust or a mentor, and then the two of you compare notes on what you found in the feedback. That's always an interesting exercise, because I bet you're harsher on yourself than the mentor or the person is that's reviewing it for you. And that will help you see that not everything is important as you think it is when it comes to speaking. Those things like speed, filler words, all that kind of stuff. Q&A. Amber's like, what? No. In the majority of cases, Q&A is optional, believe it or not. If you're not comfortable, just run to time. I'll take that outside if that's okay. You can say, come and speak to me afterwards. If you do take Q&A and you don't know the answer, I don't know is a valid answer. And you can offer to kind of check in with the person afterwards or something like that. That's a-okay. Don't be scared of Q&A. You can do some preparing to think about the questions that will come up, but if you don't want to do it, check with the organisers, but in the majority of cases, you don't have to. Just keep going. You might enjoy it. You might find, like me, you keep doing this. But you'll be wondering why. What's the point? Speaking opens doors and gives you opportunities because it makes you visible and it gives you attributes on your CV that others might not have, believe it or not. Because since I started speaking 4 years ago, other opportunities appeared, like the opportunities to write articles for places like InfoQ, to appear on podcasts, to do all sorts of wonderful things. And I built up a portfolio of content that meant I could apply for the job I have at the moment. Now, did I think I was qualified for this job? Absolutely not. I'd never used Elasticsearch before. Why would Elastic hire me? So I took Helen's advice again. I filled out the form, hit submit, ran away, got a cup of tea, and I got the job. So you never know. You never know what speaking is going to help you with. It gives you opportunities and exposure that you wouldn't dream of necessarily. Now, I'm not saying it's been an easy road. We've seen technical issues this morning. I've had more technical issues than I can count. I've had to have microphones not work. I've had screens not connect properly. I've had clickers not work. I've had coughing fits that I can't get rid of in the middle of a talk. That's quite a difficult one to get over. And every time you feel like that gazelle again, you feel like you're about to get mauled by the pack of lions. But you keep going because the next one's going to be worth it because you are a speaker, you are a lion, and you can own this. So I am happy to share the resources that we've talked about today if anyone's interested. But with that, I want to say thank you, enjoy lunch, and reach out if you have anything you want to ask. Thank you very much.